And just like that, we're live. We are live from, I'm in Scotland, but Mark, you're not in Shetland, are you? Where do you live?
No, I'm in Norway, western part of Norway.
Fantastic. I mean, I thought that Shetland, when I met you in Shetland all those years ago, we were trying to figure out whether it's 2013 or 2014.
I have no idea. So
something like that, you know. And yeah. I mean, I must be honest with you, Mark. I've never been to Shetland before. I arrived at Sunbury Airport, get on this coach up to the mainland. Hi Ripper. We gets up to Lerwick. There's a little concert. Gets on a bus that then hops across 2 islands. From the mainland, it goes across to the island of Yell. And then from Yell, we go to the island of Unst, and then we go to Uri Sound. And my best recollection of Uri Sound was backstage chatting along with you and Ewan, and you telling us all the stories about Shetlanders. And I still remember that. You know, it's still, you know, it's absolutely brilliant. You know, it's fantastic memories. And then I think that was the only night that we played together, like as in at the same concert. I think you went somewhere else the next night, and I don't know. Did you go to the Grand Dance?
I was probably there. I was probably there as a dancer.
Yeah. And I know that me and Eunice were there, and we took part in the dance, and completely messed things up to the extent that Nickel McLean was actually taking the mick out of me for my dancing. So. Well, yeah. Let me just one. I just always like to do this. Once I don't have two computer screens, and so what I need to do is check and make sure that everything is going as it should be, and that we've got the right that we're actually live. And we're both on screen, and you can hear us both. So just 2 seconds. I'll just confirm that. Yes, I see you and me. Mark, absolutely fantastic to have you join us all the way from Norway. Can I though take you back to your earliest beginnings? I will not share the photograph unless you want me to of the young Mark Laurenson with the fiddle. Say
the young innocent Mark Laurenson,
yeah, that's right, yeah. But no, could you tell us a little bit about your sort of musical background growing up in, I presume, Lerwick?
No, actually, further south, Bigton is the name of the village.
Ah, right. But for schooling, you would have gone up to Lerwick, is that right?
Yeah, for high school, I was in Lerwick. We had primary and secondary school out in the country.
Yeah.
And then, but I learned. My granddad played the fiddle.
Ah, right.
So when I was 8 years old, that's when you're in Shetland. When you're 8 years old, then you get you start getting the offer to learn an instrument. Though.
Yeah.
I remember quite well getting a letter home to my parents. So I wasn't really like. It was pretty much wondered which instrument would your son like to learn.
Right.
And I'd already got a half-size fiddle for my birthday. And my granddad had learnt me Baa Baa Black Sheep and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Yeah.
And then I started in the school lessons. So with Willie Hunter, I was lucky to get him for about 1.5 years before he passed away with cancer.
Yeah.
And it was a unique, at the time, quite unique in Scotland, though. We had free instrument lessons every week, though. I had a private a lesson, just me and the teacher, once a week, the rest of my school life, until I left school and as a 17-year-old.
Wow. Did that have an impact then on your other subjects? Was it like the teachers sort of got a bit upset that you were taken out of a class for, say, a half hour to go and do this?
I remember once we got to high school, and some of the maths teachers were a bit bit frustrated about that mass was much more important than fiddle music.
Like as if you've never used music for your career.
So I remember a lot. I can still remember a lot more fiddle tunes than trigonometry and algebra, at least. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Always worked on a rota. Though. You didn't like you never spoiled the same class each week though, because you moved on a rota basis though. And it was a bit like that. The fiddle took precedence, so they hadn't the normal subject teachers. They didn't have any power over you to stop you going. It was your right to go to your fiddle lesson. So so it was and it's been a backbone of especially the fiddle tradition, but music generally in Shetland the last almost 40 years now.
I was going to say, you mentioned 40, the number 40. There's a famous group, was it called the Shetland 40 Fiddlers?
Yeah, they started off as the 40 Fiddlers,
The 40 Fiddlers.
Probably in the 70s. I'm not really sure when, but they became the Shetland Fiddler Society. And Tom Anderson, he started the 40 Fiddlers. He gathered up, rounded up as many of the older players that were still around, and other. There's just he almost, I suppose, he tried to save the tradition. Though he was going around the country as an insurance salesman, and he made a brilliant archive of a lot of music, and also knew all the players and got them together in the town to play. The 40 Fiddlers travelled the world as well. They were in several countries. There's some great stories of them going around Berlin and places like that. Like they've almost never been out to Shetland before, and they've got the marking the corners of the streets with chalk so they can find their way home to the hotel afterwards and things like that.
I seem to remember you telling me about the fact that they had never ever been in a like a hotel with several stories before.
There were a few men there that got lost in the hotel. That's right. Yeah, the first day they didn't come down to breakfast because they ended up down in the laundry basement somewhere, and the next day they came to breakfast perfectly. And they managed to find a bedroom as well. And they wondered how this had happened. And then one of them had taken with them a roll of baler string in their suitcase. So they tied it onto their hotel doorknob and took that with them down to the breakfast room, though.
Yeah. And am I right in saying that originally this Shetland 40 Fiddlers, it was all men? It was a men only?
It's possible it was men, but I don't think it was because they were women weren't allowed. I think I think they had Violet Tulloch on the piano.
Oh right, yes.
But at the time there weren't so many women playing the fiddle. There were a few women players in the old days, but there probably wasn't so many at that time.
Right. Okay.
It became almost in the modern day. It's almost the opposite, I suppose. I remember the fiddle competitions. There was much more girls than boys at some point.
Yes, I mean, when it comes to music, I don't think that gender has anything to do with it at all, does it?
No,
it's completely irrelevant. You can listen to. I suppose that's the other thing I admire about music. It doesn't matter what gender or color or anything. It's just all encompassing, isn't it? It's. I mean, my hero growing up was my Uncle Chris, and his hero was Oscar Peterson, the Canadian jazz pianist. Who were your heroes? I mean, you've mentioned Tom Anderson and Willie Hunter. I seem to remember Tom Anderson is a very famous composer as well.
He's written, he was a man I never met, but he wrote several hundred fiddle tunes.
Yes,
several volumes of books with his tunes in them. Slocket Light, for example, is one of them.
Yes, the Slocket Light. Yes. And what does Slocket Light actually mean? Because as you say, it's very famous, but it's
a Slocket Light. When you turn out a light, or if you dampen a candle or a wick, then you slock the light. Though it's a dialect word. But he wrote it when the last I think it was when the last house of with people in it moved away from one of the villages up in the
Right.
northwest, around about Aishina somewhere. And that was the Slocket light, though. That was the last light that went out in the window. So.
Absolutely. So, I suppose my question is, apart from fiddle music, was there any other music that that you were listening to? Because I think I'm right in saying that Shetlanders have a pretty sort of eclectic taste when it comes to music, don't they?
I think so. But I was a kind of a fiddle nerd at some points as well, though. So
Okay.
I think I'm a much broader musical interest now. But it was for me. It was the fiddle or the folk music as a youngster, and at the same time the indie rock pop 90s scene from Britpop and indie music. It was the perfect age for the Blur Oasis battles of
Oh
the
wow.
90s and things like that. I learned the electric guitar and could play all the albums of both Blur and Oasis on the lead guitar at one point. And
Excellent.
I've
Yeah, I
forgotten
must.
everything now, but and then once I became 15, 16, 17, then I kind of dived into folk music and bought all the CDs I could from the two different shops in Lerwick. It was before the internet properly, so there wasn't much net sales. So it was just whatever the shopkeepers could get their hands on.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, Irish and Canadian fiddle music became available, though I didn't know it existed almost. And then after that, it's just been a kind of a more and more folk music from all over the world, I suppose. That's been interesting. But also, I like almost everything without being an expert in anything, I suppose. But I see the last 10, 15 years, so I found out about Scandinavian music, and there's a incredible depth, varied folk music world over here as well, though, and from all the Scandinavian countries.
Yes, I would imagine that they've even had influence from as far east as Russia. Some of them, there'll be
some of the best accordionists I know are Finnish accordionists. They have a wonderful tango tradition there as well.
Yeah.
In Finland, and it's just amazing to listen to some of them. I'm kind of out of the loop again after getting kids and building the house and stuff. So I have to start getting back out from semi-retirement and getting out into the scene again, I suppose.
Well, shall we see if we can get this YouTube video to play of this? Because when I met you, you had just finished an album with a group that goes by the name of Amos. Is that right?
Yeah.
I've got. In fact, hold on a sec. Let me show you this. Here is my signed copy, complete with your signature at the top there.
Yeah. Sure,
yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. Look at that, eh? Look, it's still in pristine condition.
I probably told you it makes a good coaster.
It's never made a good coaster. It just sits there. The actual CD itself is in the car, and I've also got it on because I put it onto my computer, my laptop, and popped it onto the iTunes. And but let's have a little bit of. Hopefully, this will work fine. Sorry, we should have also mentioned, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but, clearly the fact that you kept going with the fiddle all during high school, Mark Laurenson was making a name for himself as a youngster in the Shetland music scene.
Yeah, but in Shetland, you've got to remember it's an incredibly big tradition.
Yes.
There's 22,000 people and more than 3,000 play the fiddle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like There were young when I was growing up. There was young groups. Fiddler's Bid was still
Yep.
up and coming. Young, they all had their hair still.
Yeah.
They were no, and loads of groups that were doing crossover from folk music, fiddle music to rock music.
Yeah.
And it was the, at that time there was nothing cliche or taboo or uncool about the fiddle. It was like it was almost the opposite, really, and kind of got into scenes that you can go. It's like a unique place. So you can go into a pub at about 11, 12 o'clock in the evening, when everybody's at about the top of their having the peeking about the night though, and you can come in with three guys with fiddle cases and open them up in the corner and start playing.
Yeah.
And almost everybody will clap when you finish the set.
Yeah.
Even though it's unamplified and quite quiet in the circumstances.
Yeah.
So it's like how the traditional music seems to have a place and a respect, I suppose, with almost everybody.
I must admit, me and my cousin, back in 1990, we went to Amsterdam and busked for a week on the basis that my uncle Crystal, I mentioned, was playing in a piano bar, and he said, to me and my cousin, you should come to Amsterdam and busk, and we did, and it was absolutely incredible. We made enough money to pay for the trip to Amsterdam. Well, apart from the flights, but it covered all of our meals and drink and everything. Just busking, and we thought we were doing well, but we were only busking from about sort of 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 4 in the afternoon. Then when my cousin after that he went to Leeds Jazz College, and he was telling me that they could earn easily double that in 30 minutes just by playing outside when it was pub closing time. As you say, it's just, when it comes to the end of the night, people are so appreciative. But anyway, enough of me talking about busking. So when did the mandolin become part of the repertoire?
Oh, I think I was probably about. I think I got my first mandolin was about 10 or 11, but I was probably 16 or 17 before I played it on stage. Mandolins are quite difficult to play when they're not playable, I suppose. When they're badly set up, then they're really difficult to play any good. So I eventually enjoyed the mandolin, and I enjoyed listening to the mandolin. Has also been a kind of a rejuvenated instrument in Shetland over the years. Homebrew was the first pioneers, I suppose. Music circles for the mandolin. So we had good idols, I suppose, in Shetland, and bought myself a better mandolin, and then it all kind of started to click, I suppose.
Yeah.
And found it was a nice variety though in a concert though to do switch instruments, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I must admit, as a youngster, obviously did the accordion. I also did the cello. Didn't really like it that much. Never was interested in the violin, which was certainly in Cheltenham when I grew up. It was very much. It was the girls that did the violin, and the lads, because they're a bit bigger, they would do like the cello and maybe double bass. But it was very much that sort of gender distinction. I actually got into the violin as a result of doing the mandolin. I really liked the mandolin. I particularly liked. This is going back before, obviously, I heard your album. Stuff by Chris Thile and what's the lady? Jaros. I got a couple of albums of mandolin music, and of course then I realized, of course, it's exactly the same. It's just a violin played like a guitar, but it's got the frets. So for me it was like I did the mandolin first, and it helped with the violin. So presumably doing one helps with the other either way.
Yeah, it's quite. I suppose I already had the fingers.
Yeah.
Sort of had to learn, and I'm still learning, I suppose, the plectrum side of the instrument. But that's a totally different ball game than the bow, I suppose. So
Yeah, well, yeah, but then on the other hand, it's still, as far as I can see, when it comes to the fiddling, sometimes there's a certain amount of, fast wrist movement associated with both. It's for me, I can see similarities. Anyway, fingers crossed. Come on, cross your fingers, and let's hope that this little clip works. It's only a short bit. And I must say, of the tunes from the album Caravan, and incidentally, how could anybody get hold of this album? Because it's I saw it advertised on one internet site for about £85 for a copy of your CD, right? And honestly, that wasn't me selling it. I honestly, it was not me selling it, right? So, is it still possible to get hold of the album Caravan by Amos?
It's definitely possible. But I have about 200 copies under my bed still. So
there you go.
But I suppose you have to get in contact with me on Messenger privately. Then we can sort something out.
Okay. So if anybody wants to order a copy of the album, they could message me, and I can put them onto you.
Yeah, good plan.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Come on, fingers crossed. Let's hope this works, because this is. I would have to say, I must admit, I did, having listened to this album all the way back from Aberdeen to Galashiels, and I've been listening to it ever since. I did write out. First of all, as Brian Follis mentioned last week, I did write out David's Waltz straight away, and the last track, Valse by Vida Screed, and also Eternally is two tracks, and the second track is this jig. Let's hope this works. Fantastic. To me, that's just pure happiness listening to something like that. It's like, I always remember the second time I went up to Shetland, there was a group of Shetlanders playing, and like a home sort of band. There was about 12 of them, and the leader of the band said after the first set of tunes, he said that. A lot of people have asked us, how is it that as we're playing some of the happiest music known to mankind, we're sat here with serious faces, you know. And he said, you know, well, you got to remember that, you know, inside we are as happy as you could possibly be. If a smile comes across our face, it is purely by accident. But I you know, that whole sound, the rhythm, we were discussing earlier, the fact that it's in that sort of is like an E mixolydian mode. So you've got the you know, the lowered D natural rather than the D sharp. And it's just happiness. It's just pure. And you know, as I say, I don't want to overstress this, but, you know, get in touch with us and order this CD. Brian Forrest told me to get this CD. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, was to get this, because it was fantastic music. And I remember when I got in touch with you, and you said yourself, and isn't this a great thing? You said yourself, I am happy with that CD.
Yeah, that's
you know, it's exactly, you know. Now, could you tell us a little bit about why Amos and why Caravan?
Yeah, Amos is it's like a wish, I suppose. It's this type of luck that you give somebody an Amos. By, for example, you just give them a present without telling them why.
Yeah.
I'll put a box of chocolates on the doorstep or something, and that's you giving them an Amos and hoping that they get good luck because of your gift, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's a Amos. Caravan. That's it was a we were. Norway is full of. It's a big country, I suppose. The community council I live in, it's almost 2.5 hours drive from one side to the other.
Wow.
At 50 miles an hour. So it's kind of a tedious country to drive in as well, because the speed limit's only 50.
Wow.
And Caravan was a game we played in front of my car when we were driving on tour, basically. Which you had to shout out whenever you saw a Caravan, and if you saw a Caravan park, you got more points. So there was various penalties as well. If you said Caravan and it was a horse box, then you got a penalty, and things like that. There was at the time, I think it was almost desperation to find some kind of a CD title that we ended up with Caravan. But but it was about sometimes we need to drive 6-7 hours between gigs, though, through the day, and you can talk for a few hours, but after a few hours it gets a bit tedious. Even if you're the best of friends, I suppose, in cars. A week for a whole week, though. So games were important. Another one was trying to pick you had to pick a kind of car or a color of a car, and then hope that one was the next one you saw, though.
Yeah.
You
know, as kids, we used to, when I was traveling, certainly with my mum and dad and two younger sisters, we played a form of car bingo where, you know, my dad, being the driver, would read off the first two numbers of a registration number, whatever they may be, and you've chosen a combination of two numbers in like sort of nine lots of two numbers, and whoever got their lot crossed off, that was registration number car bingo. That used to well away the time. Yes. So from having played the fiddle and then the mandolin up through school, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your feelings on the distinction between, I met you at the Accordion and Fiddle Club Festival, which for me is like a festival of traditional Scottish music, but in a sort of accordionistic dominated, two accordions, fiddle, piano, bass, drums. I've never seen you playing in that kind of setup. I don't know if that's the kind of setup that you're even sort of interested in, because for me, I think that it's more folk music. But I'm just wondering, how do we distinguish between, sort of the Scottish country dance scene and folk music? How does one differentiate? Is it purely the instruments?
Unfortunately, possibly yes, but the instruments can be used in any way they want, I suppose, as well. That's But you're right. I was at the I'm not knocking the dance scene at all. I was involved with played first with I got involved with NES, the South Mainland Accordion and Fiddle Club in Shetland.
Right.
Learned hundreds of students, good standards. Basically,
Sure.
we learned a big catalogue of standard dance tunes and two steps and stuff there, and played a lot of Céilís. I've never really been a member of a dance band properly, but guested a few times with the Fustra and Peter Wood and that.
Oh wow!
But I was in the committee for that festival though.
Right.
So I was involved in organising of that festival in the club though in Shetland for 3 or 4 years before I moved to Norway.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's just it's the way the festivals evolve in some ways, because you have the folk festival in Shetland was there already, and then they started up the Fiddle and Accordion Club, and but the dance bands played in the folk festival before the Fiddle and Accordion Festival came to being though. And then the folk festival kind of stopped having dances afterwards, after the concerts, and that evolved in the Fiddle and Accordion Festival. Right. But I'm not really I don't like to separate the two, but that happens. Obviously, there is a separation though with the style, but it seems like the festival in Shetland though, then. If you play a fiddle or you play an accordion, then you're welcome to play at the festival. It's
sure.
They don't really look at the style that you're playing in that respect. They give everybody the time and the respect that it deserves. So, but and you have the same. But there is times that the band doesn't work. Though I remember we got a little weekend festival with I played in a big kind of party band.
Right.
In the early 2000s up till about 2010, 12. I don't remember when the last CD was made. Full Scaly Spelmanslag was the name.
Right.
But like in the name though, it got Full Scaly, and then all of a sudden people heard Céilí.
Yeah.
And thought we were a dance band.
Yeah.
So we turned up for a gig somewhere outside of Aberdeen. I'm not quite sure the name of the village again. I've forgotten that. But
sure.
all of a sudden, the dance club turned up and started requesting country dances.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a clue what we were supposed to play. Yeah. So we didn't fit into that. That band couldn't play for dancing. We gave them an 8 some reel or something, and so they got a dance, but we couldn't play the strict dances though at all. But,
I suppose that's. I would say, observing from afar, as it were, because my background certainly, up until the age of 18, I had never come across any Scottish accordion music. My only knowledge of Scottish songs were the ones that my dad had written out as a little memory, a little medley of like sort of Loch Lomond, Coming Through the Rye, 100 Pipers, and a few of the Harry Lauder songs. But I'm just wondering, of course, in some ways it's like the Scottish country dance scene. The emphasis is on the dancing and the music fitting for the dancing, whereas for me, maybe the folk music, it's more for sort of listening to. Although obviously you'll get people up dancing to the stuff, but to the stuff that you're playing, but maybe it's more listenable. again, I don't want to offend a load of people who are stalwarts of the accordion fiddle clubs, but sometimes, to go along and listen to 3.5 hours of everybody getting up playing either a march, a pipe march or a pipe jig, or it seems very much the same. I'll give you an example. The promoter of Berwick Speedway was interested in doing putting on a one-off event for the Speedway involving the Alexander brothers, Tom and Jack Alexander, and so we went along to North Berwick. He invited me to go along to North Berwick to listen to Tom and Jack Alexander at North Berwick, and they had Duncan Black and his band to start things off. Great stuff, great music, And then after they played their first set of reels, Duncan says, and that was a set of reels, and the tunes were blah 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 blah. Peter turns to me and says, "Was that 4 different tunes? I thought it was just the same tune played over and over again." It was that sort of. I suppose I'm trying to say that when it comes to the folk music, I think what I like about it is that it's music that stands alone. It doesn't need dancing. I suppose is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but nowadays it's become like that. But in the old days, I think a lot of that music was played for dance.
But,
right in the old traditional tunes. The dances are gone, but the music is still here. Some of it as well. Obviously, modern composed music is possibly is much more about written to listen to, though, I suppose. But your example of playing the same tune it's almost like what I when you're like a nerd in a certain tradition, then it's the subtle differences that's important.
Yes.
But when you're so a good example for me in Norway is when I play a set of Shetland reels, then the usual comment I get is, "It sounds just like Irish tunes," and I'm like, "It sounds nothing like Irish tunes."
Yeah.
But to a Norwegian, they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we I'm sure that we can appreciate that, that it does sound similar. Which reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever met a very, very good friend of mine, also a good friend of Peter Wood, Keith Dixon. Or have you heard of Keith? I've never met
him, but I know of him, yeah.
We've often discussed about the Shetland Fiddlers, how it's almost extraordinary how every Shetland fiddler will play the Shetland fiddle tunes exactly the same way. It's almost as if, if ever anybody dared to play it slightly differently, they were told in no uncertain terms, do that again and you'll be out. I mean, it's uncanny, isn't it? It's like, you go around the UK, and particularly obviously Scotland, you've got people playing tunes. You've come across this, I'm sure, that some tunes that are Scottish and the Irish are claiming them, and some tunes that are Irish and the Scots are claiming them, and of course everybody plays these tunes so differently. How is it that Shetland tunes by Shetlanders, it's always played the same way? Is that
possibly? I think one simple reason could be the teaching.
Yeah.
Right back to Tom Anderson and his books.
Yeah.
He and his art. They transcribed both. There were several people from the School of Scottish Studies that transcribed the old players as well. So a lot of the tunes became standardized, I suppose. Yeah. And then in a school system, you have to and playing in school groups and things like that. Then it becomes similar. But otherwise, I'm not so sure. Again, I suppose we've been taught the style, and once you've got that style, then it's quite distinctive and quite becomes quite natural, I think, to play the style and then it'll stick with the bowing and that, and it'll be quite similar, or even if we're not totally similar on notes all the time.
Sure.
Me and some of my best friends, we didn't realise how much we were playing differently until we tried to record a CD one time.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
learn the tunes properly.
Yeah. The other thing that he pointed out was that there seemed to be almost like a nautical flavour to Shetland reels, in that they would often finish each phrase with the bom bom bom, like 3 straight crotchets.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've sort of?
We've got that in the Shetland reel, you see, in the dance.
Yes. Yeah.
And the last 3, you stamp your feet 3 times at the end of the phrase. So
Right.
I think that's probably a logical reason for that. But
Yeah.
then the Shetland reels, a lot of them you can probably call seafaring reels. They had a project called the Reel Around the North Sea. And they got Shetlanders, Scottish and English musicians, Danes, and Norwegians to play together, and they found the same tunes in all the traditions.
Wow.
And that's probably travelled by sea, though.
Yeah.
So a lot of the tunes, I feel, are a lot of old tunes that have travelled to the islands, so from other traditions, and vice versa, though. And then the older tunes is the ones that become even before that time. That's what's the ones we learned from the Trows, so from the little people under the hill, you know, the Trowie tunes. We have a whole catalogue of them as well, though. So which is from older time. But then that's almost more Scandinavian in some ways, like the old almost like Halling music and Springer tunes in Norway.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that Keith always pointed out was that it sort of that's the 3 beats at the end was very much a sort of hornpipe thing, but you've explained it beautifully. That yes, of course, you get the stamp, 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 which would be at the end of the hornpipes, at the end of the reels. I've been to Shetland 3 times. I must admit, I can fully understand why Peter Wood moved there many, many years ago. I can fully understand why a lot of other people have moved there to live in Shetland. It is absolutely idyllic. It's like, a different world altogether. I remember at the very first time I met you up at Uri Sound at the village hall. Eunice and we were sat listening to the concert, and she was chatting to a couple who had come, a local couple who had come to the concert. And at one point I said, I hope you don't mind me asking, but you're local? Yeah. I said, I'm not picking up much of a Shetland accent. She said, no, we're from Swindon, like 30 miles from where I live, and they moved there to get away with it, to get away from it all in Swindon. Yeah, one can understand. It's like, it's a different world up there, Why move to Norway? Is it even more idyllic?
In some ways, it's but I moved because I met my girlfriend, my wife, though, and just clicked for me, really, the lifestyle. And moved to Oslo first, though. I've never lived in a city before, but Oslo was a very good city to start in, I suppose, because you're never more than about 30 minutes from the countryside with a tram or a bus in Oslo. So there was a lot, and then we moved here to the west coast, to Suldal, and it's mountains. Like we lived on we have one of the deepest lakes in Norway, 250 meters down from the house, so down the steep hill, and then we've got mountains 1,200 meters high right up behind us, so and cabins and reindeer and moose and deer and There was even Wolverine up here a few years ago.
Yeah.
So was killing all the sheep and
Oh dear.
no, it's kind of like now we're properly in the sticks. So I've got to apologise. I'm almost starting to speak Norwegian just thinking about it. But
listen, that's what we like about the Shetlanders. You know, it's a completely different language altogether, isn't it? From Scotland, and obviously it must be because I don't know. Is it the Scandinavian effect? I mean, I remember once asking you about a tune, or you pointed out a tune. I got a couple of books from the music shop, and one of the tunes was written by somebody with the surname of Young Klaus, and you told me a story about Young Klaus.
Yeah.
I wondered if you could repeat this.
I'm not sure. I have a few stories, so usually. He was one of the local fiddlers from my area, one of the 2 or 3 that played. So he had to walk though to the various dances. They played in barns there. I think the Bigton dance in our village was in a barn on a Sunday night. So even though they were very religious, it was important to have a night of music as well. So Sunday night had to do. But he was one of the stories I remember was when he was working on a mast for a boat. He was cutting it with what we call a fit-ditch. It's a type of axe, I suppose, that you swung between your legs though.
Wow.
And he hit his leg with the axe.
Oh, never.
And instantly felt that he'd done a good injury. And the only way he was going to be able, he couldn't bear looking at where he was at. He would have to try and make his way home first before he was going to look at the.
Yeah.
It was better to take the boot off when he got home and fix the wound. Though.
Wow.
Home was about 3 or 4 miles walk though.
Oh, never.
So he started walking, and while he was walking, then he could feel the blood though starting to fill into his leather boot.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this the whole way though, and by the time he was home, he was sure that the blood was almost spilling over the top of his boot though. And got into the living room and thought, no, I'm going to have to take off the boot and look at this.
Yeah.
And when he got the boot off though, and he realised he'd only just managed to cut through the sock, and there was only a little scratch on his foot. So the only thing he could do was put on his boot again and walk back to his work and keep working on the mast.
Oh dear. No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. No, I remember you told me once about the you told us about the apparently the Shetlander that loved his wife so much that he actually told her. And I also remember you explained a little bit about the history of the surname Young Klaus.
Yeah. See if I can remember that one again. It was an old lady in our village that told me that one. Apparently there were 2 Germans that came ashore to Shetland at one point. And they couldn't understand what they were called, so they went by the names of Old Klaus and Young Klaus.
Right.
And there was a girl in the village that at one point became pregnant though, and without a boyfriend on the scene though, and then and so somebody asked who the father was it Old Klaus or Young Klaus? That was Young Klaus. Right. So that became the surname though, apparently for the kid.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. But unfortunately, I think the family line you were telling me it sort of survived about 3 generations, and then it was lost.
It was lost at some point. Yeah, I don't really know. There's possibly people in the family, but they're like married out though, I suppose. So that the name disappeared at least. Yeah. The name's gone. So you were mentioning sort of semi-retirement, as if you're not doing that much fiddle playing at the moment. So what is Mark doing over there in Norway now then, apart from being a husband and a father? a jack of all trades, master of none, I suppose, is what
Oh,
we
not at
used to
all.
say. But when we moved over to the west coast, then or when I moved to Oslo first, then I'm a trained joiner, though. It's my profession.
Yeah.
So I got a full-time job with that, and so there wasn't much time for the touring, so that kind of took a back seat. But
Yeah.
moved over to the west coast and became fully self-employed joiner, and then I
Yeah.
picked up the music again, though. And so when I
Right.
met you and when we made the Caravan CD and that, I was probably playing. It was probably about 30 or 40% of my income was from the
Oh, right.
fit.
Yeah.
And then at some point I decided to get a job as a sound engineer at the local music venue here.
Right.
I say local; it's an hour drive down to the music
Wow.
venue. So I was there, though, and then the family came along, and 4 years ago we started building this house. Though it's
Yeah.
in the background, and I built that by myself, though, and with the help of my family and friends, though.
Yeah.
So used about 2.5 years of nights and weekends and holidays to build the
Wow.
house, and I almost so there wasn't much fiddling though, but I've been mainly playing, I suppose, Norwegian dance classes
Yeah.
for youngsters in the
Sure.
schools. So I've been on a few
Yeah.
tours around the schools as fiddle player for dance instructors and a few concerts here and there. I'm kind of master of ceremonies or a compere for me and my wife and another colleague and a fiddle player, a Ranga fiddle player, Tove Solheim. We've started a folk club here because Suldal is actually quite not the biggest not the biggest scene, I suppose, for folk music. There's
Sure.
not many of us playing, so we basically started up a folk club ourselves. So not
Sure.
only
Excellent.
to promote folk music, but to also promote the fact that you can go out, have a drink, sit down and listen to great music and relax and have a good
Yeah.
night out.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a time here. It seems like a time here that people went to concerts, but they didn't do anything else. There was no offer around about. There was no pub. There was no food. There was no socialising around the concert.
Right. Yeah.
And then the TV has become and the internet and that as well, though, become a big draw. So we decided to go for the worst timing possible in the week and have a concert, a folk club night, 8 o'clock at night on a Friday.
Yeah.
Where so we're in direct competition with the most popular Norwegian chat shows and things. So I'm in direct competition with the Velcro in the sofa. And actually winning, I suppose. We have a good following now of people
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
between 40 and 60 folk coming every time we have
Oh,
a folk
superb.
club, though.
Yeah.
So, I'm just there speaking rubbish, and the theory though is that the whole thing is the same. It's just the artist is different, and trying to teach people that there's a hell of a lot of good music that nobody's ever heard of before. Like
Sure.
there's loads of brilliant bands touring the world that nobody's ever heard of. Probably better than a lot of the people that we have heard of as well, usually. And in folk music, in Suldal, there's quite a lot of people that hasn't heard much folk music at all, though. So we
Wow.
get in bands that we know, so the theory is that people trust our judgment, though, and come and enjoy themselves. Though.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I run a session afterwards as well. Though.
Wow. Well, certainly, when up in Shetland, you do get the opportunity to hear the sort of groups, solos, duos, trios, quartets, bands from the mainland and then Shetland. But then, as you say, you get they get a lot of people from Scandinavia, both particularly Norway, Finland. I'm not sure about Denmark and Sweden, but it's certainly it's great to listen to these other the Scandinavian music. It goes down a storm in Shetland, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And both festivals as well. So in Norway as well, you have like in the fiddle accordion festival scene, and it's the accordion music that they all love. But that's just one part of the tradition over here as well. It's a bit like the Scottish scene in some ways. Like it's kind of mixed between the folk music and the it's kind of funny they call it gamel dance.
Right.
Old dance music,
Right.
but
Yeah.
the dances is like waltzes, Rhinelander,
Yeah.
Scottish. It's actually that was the dances. Like, that's the modern dances. So why it's called old dancing, I don't really know. But absolutely, in the fiddle and accordion scene, they absolutely love the Scandinavian accordion music.
Yeah.
And Norwegians are amazing at the duets and that accompanying each other, second voices, third voices as well in music, and having a complex sound, though I suppose it's quite different to the standard dance band setup, at least.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, let's just finish off then. You were telling me earlier about how much you like the if you like the fact that let me get this right, that Norway is or at least you're into the kind of the socialist side of things, you know, and Norway sort of lends itself to that sort of you know, it's a fair country, you know. It's not one that
I'm a big fan of left-wing politics, I suppose you could say. If communism had worked, I'd have been a communist, but it doesn't work, so we'll drop that. But over here, like you pay a lot of tax. I'm not going to deny that. You pay a lot of tax, but you also it's like a healthcare system second to none, really, and as a worker, like an employee, I don't think there's any country that's well, there probably is though, but you've got very good terms and conditions, and you get paid a wage that's respectable. The wages are so respectable that it's very difficult to work overtime legally.
Right.
Overtime isn't really a thing.
Sure.
Put it that way. You can, your boss can ask you to work overtime, but you can say no.
Right.
For example, and you don't. Generally, you shouldn't need to work overtime to pay your bills.
Right.
Whereas I know a lot of people in Scotland take a job because there's lots of overtime.
Yes.
So that they can pay the bills. And so there's a big difference in that. I'm working a 35, 36 hour week.
Yeah.
And happy with that. And I know plenty of folk that's working 50-hour weeks in Scotland just to keep the wheels going, basically. And then the how should I put it though? I just think it's the right way about it. Like there's obviously there's rich people and there's corporations and that over in Norway as well. There's biggest oil company in the world almost in Statoil or Equinor and that, but they've also wisely, a lot of things are still state owned though. So a lot of like even a lot I suppose this Corona thing was a good example where when the government told us what to do, everybody said, "Okay, we trust you. You guys know better," and generally worked very well over here.
Yeah.
Incidentally, do you know a similarity? What's the similarity between COVID-19 and Corona and 5 centimeters of snow in Shetland?
No.
Everything gets cancelled. It was a time we had a trip. There were a group of Danish people coming over to Shetland, students, and they were supposed to be going to all the schools and things, and they came covering in snow, almost no snow at all, but everything got cancelled. So we ended up having 4 days in the lounge, just having the best session ever. And I think they had the time of their lives. They didn't see anything in Shetland, but all the buses were cancelled and all the schools were closed, and it was just madness.
Up in the lounge.
Yeah, we were basically in the lounge for 4 days.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Okay. Listen, Mark, it's been absolutely fantastic to catch up with you again. And all I can say is that, you know, if you want to listen to something really good, then this is definitely one of the best you can get hold of. Loads of, in fact, there's a lot of original tunes, aren't there, that are written specifically by the band members. And it's yourself on fiddle and mandolin, Kevin Henderson on fiddle, and Vida Screed on guitar and stomp board. As I say, it's one that I've, as soon as I got it back, popped on the computer and listened to the tracks and wrote out some of the tunes, you know, and it was just brilliant stuff. Could you just to finish off? I assume that you can speak Norwegian.
Yeah, I can speak Norwegian.
Yeah. I'm very much into the, as you can see, the free Stephen Avery, free Brendan Dassey, which I think you were saying that you're not aware of, the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer, but a very good friend of mine in LA passed away recently. But at the end of, he was also a member of the YouTube community. His closing phrase was, "If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe." How would you say that in Norwegian? If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe.
Hvis du ikke har allerede gjort det, vær så snill å abonnere.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard it from Mark himself. If you haven't done so, Mark, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm kind of hoping that having hopefully enjoyed it, you'll be agreeable to come on with me again at some future date.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. It was a good fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mark. And I'll say cheerio. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. And it's bye from him, bye from me. And that's cheers.